The US government has taken on more debt in 3 months than it did over the past 3 years. The Treasury Department says it needs $3 trillion between April and June to pay for its coronavirus rescue measures.
The increase in privately held net marketable borrowing is primarily driven by the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak, including expenditures from new legislation to assist individuals and businesses, changes to tax receipts, including the deferral of individual and business taxes from April until July.
It's not legally possible to blow up national debt by this proportion under normal circumstances, but the government and the Federal Reserve are using emergency powers to contain the economic fallout of COVID-19.
We are deploying these lending powers to an unprecedented extent, enabled in large part by the financial backing and support from Congress and the Treasury. We will continue to use these powers forcefully, proactively, and aggressively until we're confident that we are solidly on the road to recovery.
With the latest increase, total US debt will rise to nearly $24 trillion. That's 116% of the entire economy's output, or GDP, for a year. It's also the highest debt ratio since World War II. For now, the country's economic managers don't have a plan for paying down these loans.
The time will come again, and reasonably soon, I think, where we can think about a long-term way to get our fiscal house in order, and we absolutely need to do that. But this is not the time to be, in my personal view, this is not the time to let that concern, which is a very serious concern, but to let that get in the way of us winning this battle, really.
Higher taxes, inflation, and growth driven by technological advancements helped bring down government debt in the post-war years. But now, with the economy headed into recession, low taxes and stalled exports, reining in the debt may be much harder. Mobin Nasir, TRT World.
Well, for more on this, Matt Maley joins us now live from Massachusetts. He's managing director at the trading firm Miller Tabak. Good to have you back with us, Matt. Now, as we heard, the US government debt to GDP is now approaching levels not seen since post-World War II. What does that mean on a practical level? Will the average American feel that debt burden?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people are saying, well, we all know they will eventually if the issue isn't taken care of. But a lot of the people, at the Fed and our government are saying we can't really worry about that right now because we're kind of in a war, we're in an emergency situation, and therefore we have to kind of disregard that at least for the time being, and that's very dangerous. I mean, one of the things as you guys just talked about is the biggest program like this since World War II. The problem is that the money that went for that in World War II helped build up for a war. I mean, it put people back to work. The economy came out of the Depression, and people went to work to help the U.S. and the Western powers go fight in a major war. And it's the situation right now. All they're really doing is giving people some money and small businesses a bridge to get to the other side. They're not, and I understand why they're doing that early on. But longer term, you want them just doing something, some of the stimulus going to other things that will actually create some revenue, create some jobs and some tax dollars to help pay for this thing, through infrastructure programs, rather than just giving people and small businesses money. As much as I understand that needed to be done early, we need something more than that going forward.
Yes, further to that point, we've heard officials justify this increase in borrowing to fund the unprecedented coronavirus spending measures that the Congress has passed recently, more than $2 trillion worth and growing. Do you think that's money well spent?
It's emergency money and we do need it, but it can't be spent all in this one way. I mean, it kind of reminds me, I guess my point is that not too far down the road, we're going to run into the same problem some of these companies have run into. Remember, all these companies took on all this debt over the last 10 years, especially in the United States, and instead of putting it to reinvesting it in their business so it would create revenue for them to service their debt, instead they just wanted to buy back their own shares. And I think that we're going to run into that same kind of problem here. We're not putting it into the kind of things that will create tax dollars, create tax revenue through jobs. And so again, it's the right thing to do to a certain degree, but the programs have to be shifted to something that is going to create revenue and create tax dollars, like an infrastructure program and job creating programs, I guess is my point.
As we know, China is a large holder of US debt, and given the recent tensions we've seen, not only with the US-China trade war, but even more recently with the Trump administration blaming Beijing for this outbreak, there has been this increased scrutiny of America's debt position. Do you think those tensions will pose a problem in terms of the US getting this money from countries like China?
Well, that's certainly a concern, and of course, it's probably not going to go away because the Trump administration wants to point some of the blame for the fallout of the coronavirus towards China, and the election isn't until next November. So I think this blame game is going to be going on for a while now. So yes, I mean, if the China decides they don't want to buy, and God forbid they start dumping treasuries, that's going to cause interest rates to move up. And of course, one of the things that allows the U.S. to issue all this debt and take on all this debt is the cost of it is very low with interest rates low. If rates go up, it causes a bigger problem. So again, I understand emergency reasons for doing it, but we have to be very careful about how long we do it and in what way we do it.
Okay, Matt Maley in Massachusetts, thank you for your analysis, as always.